So the last 2 weeks we've been focused on God's mission and how we join Him. And as I thought about this coming in, we're about to celebrate 50 years of ministry at West End Assembly of God in 2 weeks. Yeah. In 2 weeks, our church turns 50 years old. Now, you may say, well, time for the midlife crisis or whatever, you know. I know what it's like to be 50. I'm about the same age as the church, and so I know the aches and pains and the things, but I also feel alive, and I'm ready to celebrate with you. In fact, we created 3 huge events, because when you turn 50, you can't just have one birthday party. You got to have 3, okay? We created 3 huge events on March 3rd, March 7th, and March 10th. And here's what they look like. On March 3rd, we got Dr. Bob Roden, founder of West End Assembly of God, coming in here to celebrate with us. Then on Thursday night, we've got New York Times bestselling author Mark Batterson, who's been a longtime friend of WEAG for a long time. He's going to come and celebrate on Thursday night with all of the churches that WEAG has launched over the years. So we're going to celebrate on the 3rd, and not just Dr. Roden and his speaking, but we're going to have lots of things that we celebrate during that day. Then on Thursday, the 7th, then on Sunday, March 10th, the myth, the legend, the mission man himself, John Hirschman, is going to be in the house preaching with us on the 10th. It's going to be awesome, and we're going to have a great time together celebrating 50 years of ministry. And I think about that perspective. I'm blown away by it, but also I'm renewed. Just something amazing about that, to step into this moment. In fact, in the weeks following our 50th year anniversary, we're going to be laying out, I told you that, I've been praying and working with our pastors, elders, and deacons about vision and asking God, what does the next chapter of WEAG look like? So we're about to launch WEAG 3.0. That's the 3rd chapter. We're about to launch WEAG 3.0, and just like the choir told me, you ain't ready for this song coming up, okay? You ain't ready for it, I promise. You're not ready. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be incredible, but it's going to be faith-filled, as it always has been here at West End Assembly of God, taking the greatest values that have been instilled in this place and launching them and renewing them and accelerating them into the future. I can't wait to share it with you. And in fact, as I thought about sharing that with you, I asked God this question this week. Lord, what is the number one thing that we need to hear as a church so that we can be ready for what God has ahead of us? What is the most important thing that we could hear as a church? And I want to focus on that this week and next week as my way of celebrating 50 years of ministry, and then come behind that and step into vision with you and talk about things like 5-year plans and 10-year plans, and look down the road and dream with God and dream big with God. You know you can do that with God, because there's no dream big enough that God can't handle, right? So we're going to come and dream together, but what can we do to be ready for that? And so God laid this on my heart. In fact, He put me exactly in front of the right person for the last 2 days. Okay, not as in just past 2 days, but 2 days earlier this week. He put me right in front of the leadership guru himself. He's written 83 books, sold over 73 million copies, and the Assemblies of God brought John Maxwell to meet with some of our pastors from across the country. And the bigger miracle is that I was invited to that, okay? And I got to be a part of this kind of just an intimate gathering and Q&A and time of working it out. And what I learned about John Maxwell that a lot of you may not even realize is that John Maxwell's greatest gift is actually evangelism. It is. It's his greatest gift, and it's pretty amazing. And if you don't know this, John Maxwell actually has personally led, at one point, he led the 10th largest church in the country, and the fastest growing church in the country, and God put it on his heart that he had somehow lost sight of one of his greatest gifts, which was sharing the truth to the world, and he made a commitment to spend 10 hours a week from that moment on reaching out to people who were far from God. and spending time with people who were far from God, at least 10 hours a week. And he began to intentionally do this work. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what it looks like to do that in our lives. Because here's what the result was. Since that time, John Maxwell has led personally more than, in his lowest year, this would be his lowest year, he has led more than 174 people per year, every year since, personally. Not raise your hand, come to Jesus. Personally, has led 174 people to the Lord every single year. Every single one of his companies right now, last year in 2018, led 123,000 people to the Lord last year, and they never went to a church to get it. Isn't that pretty amazing? Yeah. So I was in front of the absolute right person, and more than that, Jesus had given me a passage on my heart even before I went there, and this is what he said. This is what you need to get. And it's the very thing that Jesus said that we needed before we'd ever talk about going out and strategies and plans. This was Jesus' heart. The number one thing that was on his mind. It's what he died for. It's why he came. It was his very mission to reach those far from God. This is West End Assembly of God's mission. And if you haven't seen it lately or been around, we've been rolling it out all over the church, but never from the platform. We did kind of a different way to do it, and so a lot of you already know this, and some of you, this may be new to you. It's really just a reworking and a rewording of what Jesus said 2,000 years ago and what we've said many times over the last 50 years. But this is how we're saying it right now. Our desire is this. This is what Jesus' mission is. This is what West End Assembly God's mission is. To see every person experience transformation through Jesus Christ. Would you read that with me? To see every person experience transformation through Jesus Christ. So how is West End Assembly of God going to do that? What's our vision for how we see this mission playing out? It is to expand the family of God across all cultures and all generations. Would you read that with me? To expand the family of God across all cultures and generations. God has uniquely positioned you right now in this church to do just that. In fact, for 50 years, he's been leading us to better equip us as a church to expand the family of God. When you come in this place, we want you to feel like family, okay? If you're brand new to this place and you've never, or maybe a family is like maybe a bad word to you, you wish your family was like this one, okay? We want you to come in and feel like family when you get here. And I hope that's already happening to you, but we want to go beyond that. We want to expand the family of God across all cultures and generations, and we believe God has uniquely positioned us to do that. And so we're going to step into that together. But before we do, let's look at Jesus' words so we're ready to receive the vision that God has for us and put what's number one on Jesus' mind on ours today. In Matthew chapter 9, Matthew records this story. Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of the area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. He healed every kind of disease and illness. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. So he said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few." So this was his strategy. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into the fields. This is what I want us to understand and hear from Matthew's story. That there are many fields, but few workers. There are many fields. There is no shortage of fields. There are many fields that we need to go to around the world, and West End Assembly of God has been going there, but there are many fields right now in your life as well, around you. The fields are endless, but there are few workers. There are many fields, but few workers. And the question I want to ask you is simply this. Are you one of them? Are you one of them? You say, Pastor, I appreciate that. I'm glad I'm here this morning. I'm glad I'm watching online, but I'm not even sure I would say that I'm there yet in believing that Jesus is all that you're saying, and I'm not spending my whole life, and I don't understand all of that, and I would say this to you, hey, stay with us. But wouldn't you want to be in a place that believed in something so much? If it really changed my life, wouldn't it make sense that I would share that with you? If it really transformed me, if I was truly transformed through Jesus Christ, wouldn't I want to expand that transformation and see every culture and every generation and every field that I have the opportunity to go to experience that same transformation? I would hope that you would want to come into a place where that faith was genuine. You've come into a place this morning. Amen, brother. You've come into a place this morning where our faith is genuine. We believe. And Jesus has changed our lives. So we want to join him. We want to be one of the workers. And I'm so glad I got to spend 2 days with John Maxwell because, you know, some of you have been reading. How many of you ever read? He wrote 83 books and 73 million copies. Surely some of you have read John. How many people have ever read a John Maxwell book? Okay, awesome. Like a majority of you. That makes sense according to those numbers, okay? But I'm so glad that God put me in front of not just a leadership person, but an evangelist, a person who goes out and tells the good news and believes that that's what God called him to do. And I needed that. And this morning, maybe you're the same way. And so, you know, John Maxwell, if you read of any of his leadership books, you know that he has a rule of 5, okay? And John Maxwell's rule of 5 is, you can go read that. It's really great. It talks about knowing what you want to accomplish and having the right tools and the consistency. And he builds on this rule of 5. But then he takes the tools that he has personally. He says, hey, these are my gifts, what God has given me. His largest gift is, you probably guessed it, leadership and communication, because he goes around in that amazing, deep voice of his, communicating all over the world and to people who are far from God. But also one of his gifts was evangelism, and he actually took some time out with some pastors and shared what it looks like to apply his rule of 5 to his gift in sharing the gospel. And here's what it looks like. Number 1. Add value to all people. Add value to how many people? All people. That word messes us up a bit. That word all really messes with the Christian community sometimes. Because did you know that Jesus actually loves people that you don't like? And you say, well, yeah, I get it, Pastor. Only God. Only God could love with that one. I get it. But if we were to come and take this point and say, hey, I'm not just wanting to come into a relationship to share my faith, but I would actually come into that relationship to add value to that person. And I wouldn't just say add value to the people I like, but I would add value to every single person that Jesus loves. And so the world would see unconditional love, and I would understand. Did you know that Jesus actually died for people who don't vote the way you vote? I know that's hard to believe. Jesus died for a Democrat. Jesus died for a Republican. Jesus died for all sides of any aisle you can find, any kind of cultural aisle that has been represented in our culture, that our culture constantly divides, and Jesus constantly crosses the divide. Our culture is constantly creating aisles, and Jesus is the one who died to go across the aisle. Jesus is the one who loves that person. So before you get excited, before they burn your guts, before they really get to you, before you really let them have it, maybe consider, what if I was one of the workers? What if I was one of those workers that Jesus was talking about? Because the fields are never ending. They never stop. But the workers are few. And that might lead me to number 2. To develop relationships with lost people. Let me go back to that passage before, Mike, if it's okay. Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages. He didn't skip any. And when he saw the crowds, he had what on them? Compassion on them. There are a lot of people that I don't necessarily feel compassionate for. In fact, if I'm truly honest, when something goes wrong, I kind of get it. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I figured that was probably. In fact, if I'm really honest, that makes more than sense to me. In fact, I'm kind of glad that happened. And maybe that describes you too. That is not a description of compassion, is it? Before we talk vision, before we start laying out plans, if we can't have this in our heart, it doesn't matter. If we're running across a field with some other kind of goal to get them into the kingdom of heaven, then we're going to miss, number 2, that we're not going to develop relationships with the lost. We're not going to develop relationships. And you know what? You can't correct people into the kingdom of God. Did you know that? If they would just did you know you can't legislate people into the kingdom of God either? You can't legislate them, you can't correct them, but you can reach them, because let me tell you what Jesus did. Jesus understood that he healed every kind of disease. In order for you to do that, there are 2 things that have to be true. Number 1, you have to know that it takes an understanding of their needs to do that. How did Matthew know that he healed every kind of disease? How did he know that? Do you think it was just a generality of his? Maybe speaking, maybe he couldn't think of them all, so he just called them all? What if Jesus was exactly who we thought he was, and he actually stopped and got to hear and listen to the needs of every single person he encountered? What if Jesus was the one who you wish you would meet? Those of you who are far from God right now, you're watching online like, I don't even believe any of this. And part of the reason is us. We haven't loved them unconditionally, and we haven't loved you unconditionally. And so you're making a judgment on Jesus based on one of his followers. And let me just look at you and apologize to you and say, I have gotten it wrong. I've thought I could correct you. I've told you my beliefs. I've told you what my standards are. I've told you what I think on every single category, but I haven't shown you compassion. And I haven't even asked you, what do you need? Would you forgive us for not even asking the question at times? We look right past it. We look right to the thing that draws our attention. Doesn't it make sense that we would miss understanding? And the second thing, you can't have understanding without time. It takes a lot of time, and I don't have time. Hey, is this story wrapping up anytime soon, Pastor? I appreciate you sharing your needs with me. I really do. I love it. John Kelly, if you could, I've just got to go now, so could you end the story? I really appreciate what you've been saying. Mac, I get it. Okay, see a counselor. I don't know. I really, really understand what it means and what you're saying, but, Alan, I appreciate it, bud, but I got to go. I'm sorry. Can we talk another time? It takes a lot of time. No wonder we don't do it. Wouldn't it make sense that if there was Jesus who wanted us to reach the entire world and join in the fields as workers, that there would be somebody who would be trying to keep us busy doing other things? We need to add value to all people, develop relationships with lost people. Some of us couldn't give a list right now of anyone we know that's far from God, which makes sense. That's not, you're just normal, okay? It means you've been probably following God for quite some time, and you came in this place and you felt like family, and you were like, why leave? And Jesus is saying, hey, here's why. Because there's a lot of fields, but there's only a few workers. Number 3, every day. Sow spiritual seeds every day. How many days? Every day. This is the rule of that consistency compounds. Here's how John Maxwell talks about this idea of rule of 5. He used the illustration that, let's say you had a really huge goal, and that the goal was, it could be anything, the biggest goal in life. But let's just say, for very practical reasons, the goal was chopping down the huge oak tree in your backyard. But you didn't want to just chop it down the way anybody else chops it down with a chainsaw or hiring somebody. You actually wanted to do it yourself personally. In fact, you wanted to do it with your bare hands. And so you wanted to chop that sucker down with an axe. Old school. You wanted to go old school on that tree and chop it down. The rule of consistency compounding is this, that every day, 5 times a day, you would go strike that tree 5 times. That every day, 5 times a day, you would go strike that tree 5 times. That every day. Well, what about when I'm sick? Every day. What about when I'm on vacation? Every day. What about surely, no, every day. The rule of consistency compounding is this, that every day you would go to that same tree, you would pick up that axe, you'd strike it 5 times, and you'd do it 5 times a day. Do you know that if you actually sow spiritual seeds every day, you can't control what's going to happen with them, but you can be the one planting them, and every day look for opportunities to plant spiritual seeds. And if you did that every single day, if you did it every single day, then number 4 would be true in your life too. You wouldn't have to look for ways too far to share your faith every day. You see, where are the lost people? This is the locating device that Jesus gave us. He said, what's the plan? Where are they at, Jesus? How are we supposed to know who they are? So pray. Everybody say, so pray. Just pray. This is brilliant. It's brilliant. Pray to the Lord of the harvest, who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into the fields. Yes. Don't take it upon yourself. Just pray. What a great strategy. And Jesus was the greatest marketer in the history of marketers. Here's why. Okay, before implicit bias even existed in the positive marketing sense of the word, Jesus already knew. Did you ever go shop for a Jeep and then everything you see is Jeeps? You ever do that? You ever buy a Jeep and then every single person you see seems to have a Jeep? You have no idea that so many Jeeps existed in the world. It's a whole Jeep world out there. I had no idea. Did you ever start thinking about some kind of new clothing that you wanted, and every single ad you start to do that? You know they do that purposely, right? I mean, anyway, it's a long story. But if you don't understand the algorithms and all the stuff, here's all you need to understand is if you want it, you think about it, and if you think about it, somebody's got it. And then all of a sudden, that's all you can think of. Jesus was saying, listen, he knew that prayer doesn't just bring results. Prayer results in changing you. And if we took the rule of compound consistency to our prayer lives, wow. Can you imagine if every day you prayed through a list of people who were far from God, every day? Not when I'm sick. No, every day. Like throw up and then pray, Every day. I'm sorry. Lay in bed with a fever and then pray. What about when I'm in the hospital? Pray. What about when I'm on vacation? Pray. If every day we would do what Jesus suggested that we do, then we couldn't get them out of our minds. But sometimes they're the furthest thing from our minds. We've got so many other things in there that consume my time. Jesus knew if he could just get you to pray. In fact, it worked so well that in the very next chapter, and Matthew records it, that every single one of his followers were sent out into every single town, and Jesus gave them instructions. Guess what happened? They took his advice and they prayed, and then they became the workers. He didn't need to recruit the workers because now there were plenty of workers who began to pray. And in fact, Luke records it in Luke chapter 10. Luke records, I think Matthew just must have run off and like got into the field, and Luke stuck around to get some more details, and then he saw Jesus call 72 other disciples, Luke records, 72 other disciples also Jesus sent into every town. He sent them into every single town, and he didn't just say go into the town, he said go into their houses. If they'll receive you, go into their houses. He didn't just send them into their house. He said, I will give you authority. Whatever their need is, you have the ability to meet it. Say, I don't know enough, Pastor. I need to get more educated than that. Let me tell you, this was not a long graduation plan here. This was not disciples who have been gone through seminary. These are people who were fishing just before, who came into Jesus. Their life was transformed. And if your life has been transformed by Jesus, you've got enough schooling. Amen. Now, before you say pastor's against schooling, that's not true, because if we really were serious about this, we get all the preparation we could possibly get to do it better. I'm not saying don't improve the way you do it. I'm saying you've got enough if you've got Jesus. In fact, sometimes we educate ourselves right out of it. We got so many things, other things over there. I'm going to consume with this part of the church and that part. I'm really feeling called to this kind of discipleship and this kind of reaching people. I'm really called to this. I'm really called to that. We've got a long laundry list, and Jesus is going, what about the people in the fields? That's why I came. That's what I wanted to say. This would move us, I believe, to rule number 5. That we would live a life that is attractive to people who are far from God. I think we struggle with this, don't we? We struggle with this. The harvest is great, but the workers are few. He said there are many fields, but few workers. But then he says, the harvest never ends. The harvest that Jesus is referring to is that people would come to him. That is the harvest. It isn't so that our church will grow. It is so that people will come into the kingdom of heaven. That is the point that Jesus always meant from the beginning of time. And if for somehow we've gotten it wrong, let me correct it for you right now in this moment. Jesus came for you. Jesus didn't come for a program that you like. Jesus didn't come for a way to get together and just kind of experience something. Jesus came so that you would experience true transformation, and that transformation would then send you out to expand the family of God across all cultures and all generations. There would be no aisle that you would ever look at as a divide, because you knew Jesus already crossed it on the cross. Come on. So, listen. I am so convicted of this in my life, because I'm going to be honest with you. I am totally failing at this. Because I'm thinking in my head like, oh my gosh, John Maxwell, oh wow, amazing. 174 people. Yeah, but he's a gifted evangelist. You know, there is a gift of evangelism. You know what else there is? There's a calling of evangelism. And it doesn't matter how gifted I am. Now, I'm not probably going to bring 174 people. If I start spending 10 hours, I'll probably screw it up more than John Maxwell, or more than a person who has a great gift, and they may bring more people, but the point is, I'll be one of the workers in the field. You're not in control of the harvest. You're supposed to work the harvest. So here's the question then. What are you working on? What's consuming your work time? Because doesn't it make sense that if this was the plan of Jesus to reach the entire world with his gospel, that there would also be another plan of evil to keep you working on something else so that you never become the worker that Jesus desired for you to be? So, this is your opportunity. This is my opportunity this year in 2019 to lead someone to the Lord. No. Don't look at the harvest. The harvest will come, Jesus said. Look at the work. That's what I want you to look at. I want you to start saying, and not miss this, that I need to start looking at the work, the right work. I don't need to just work. I need to work right. And if I'm not working on the right thing, then I will miss the work of the harvest. Why aren't more people coming to Jesus if the harvest is full? If there is a harvest that Jesus said will never end until I come back again, that more people will be able to come into a relationship with me. If there are workers, there will be a harvest. If there are workers, there will be a harvest. There is no harvest shortage. There's a work shortage. In fact, sometimes in my life, there's a work on the wrong thing. There's a work that goes against. We start to work on this in other ways all the time. Can I get that blank screen from you? Here's what happens. So we start to work on this way. It starts with you, like everything else in life. It starts with me. It's about me. It starts from me. It starts from you, okay? And then there are usually others, okay, involved. Now, I get that. I can't go through life without other people. I mean, sometimes I wish I could, but I can't. I need you, all right, so I'll understand that. But then usually what happens is then we start to get back to us, right? And it goes back to you. And usually because you are in this. Because you can't get your mind off of this. You can't get your mind off of whatever it is that's consuming you, so the others are involved, but then we come back to you, and then we make it back to most important thing I could possibly do in life is this, Jesus, fix me. Fix my circumstance, fix my situation, fix my money problem, fix my this, fix my that. And we are praying, believe me, we are storming heaven's gates with prayers. It's about this. And then it comes back to me, right? It comes back to me. See, why in the world do we talk about fixing marriages and fixing? Well, the reason why we want to come alongside and fix your marriage is because God had a plan when you came together that wasn't just about the two of you. It was actually so that you could be a worker joining him in this field and working with him to share the truth, loving unconditionally, learning about yourself, believe me, and then going out and getting better. Why do you need someone to come alongside you? Why do you need to be willing to do anything to stop the anxiety and the worry and the fear that's gripping me? Why is that important? I get it. I know they make pills for that. I know that there are things that can calm it down, but I'm saying it's important to get healthy because the world needs you. We need to spend the work in the right places. I'm not saying that we can't work on this, because if you're thinking about this, I promise you, you're not thinking about the fields. So yeah, it's important. Why is it important to give up that addiction? Why is it important to give up that wrong relationship? Why is it important to drop that thing in your life that disagrees with God? Why is it important? It is important because there are many fields but few workers. You don't need to just get healthy for you and your family. You need to get healthy for the world. They need to see a life that's compelling. I don't mean perfect. In fact, that's exactly the opposite of what they need to see. Because they don't get to see transformation unless we say, I've got a marriage problem, I've got a singleness problem, I hate my life, I hate this, and Jesus is helping me, and this is how he's transforming me. He is coming to me, and they say, wow, me too. And you say, man, I just wish you had faith. I wish you had what I had because Jesus is changing my life. Let me tell you, every atheist, what they won't tell you is that they wish God was true. They wish the fairy tale was real. They wish that there was a Jesus that came to forgive them and transform their lives, but I haven't seen it yet. What if you and I began to learn how to work something? That's what I want to do. What if you and I stopped focusing on what we were doing? You know what I think? I think we would start to be attractional. Unfortunately, we don't know the answer to this question. What is it in my life? What is it that makes people want to be a Christ follower because of me? What is it about you that make other people far from God want to run to him? What is it about you? I'm challenged by this in my own life. I think a part of me in my life and where I've been working all right. I'm laboring, but I'm laboring in the wrong place. And my laboring in the wrong place has become a distraction, not an attraction. See, when people meet me, they usually meet my problems. They usually meet where I am laboring. I used to go to business retreats all the time, and they would pump us up and get us psyched about making more money. And they would think of everything. They'd be so creative. Literally, every single thing that you walked in. There wasn't a pen that you picked up or a sign that you saw or a thing in your room or a thing in any where they wouldn't put the mission and vision in front of you. You were consumed with it. They would tell stories of amazing, I was poor, now I'm rich. They would tell amazing stories about people who figured their business out, and they would consume you with it because, why? Because they want to make money. It's not hard. I think sometimes the business world is more passionate about making money than the church is about making disciples. Listen, I'm not laying this on you. I'm laying it on us and saying we have got to get first things first in our lives and get this straight. I get it. It's easy to come out from the field. It's easy. I remember working on a farm. I learned to work hard. I had a lot of hard jobs growing up. My stepdad insisted on it. I didn't like it, but it made me a hard worker. Thank you, Dad. Appreciate you. And he told me, go work on a farm. I'm like, oh my gosh, work on a farm? That's hot. Yeah, it's hot. Well, I didn't just go work on a farm. I went and worked on a farm, and I learned to work in hay lofts that are about 120 degrees in the summer. I was the little runt that they scurried up the hay bale conveyor who would fit through that little tiny hole, who would go up there, and I was the one stacking that hay deep in that hay loft at 120 degrees. I was the one who would go out into the fields with the rest of the schleps, the rest of the people, schlepping around and carrying this and carry that. I was a gopher. Go for this, go for that. That's usually your first job, okay, if you're doing it right. And I worked really hard. I would go out to the fields, but then there was this bell on the farmhouse. And old Mrs. Farmer, she'd start ringing that bell. And we'd come running because we knew that was the moment that we were going to get that fresh lemonade. We were going to get that ice cold lemonade, ice cold water. We were going to get filled. That was the moment that we were going to get to sit around. There's something about farm families. I got to tell you, I'm not a farmer. I don't get it, but there's something about farm families that work together. Just attractional. It's attractive to me. I hang out with them, and then you know what else they got in the house? Air conditioning. I'm not talking about 1800s kind of farming. I'm talking about just when I was a kid in the 80s, all right? I'm talking about they had all the amenities in that farmhouse, and that was a whole lot better than the field. So the question was this: why would I want to go back to the field? And doesn't it make sense for us today as a church? I think when we come in to this place, it's beautiful, and it's beautiful for a reason. You've met a lot of people like you who also have seen transformation. This is the farmhouse. This is the gathering. We get refreshment. But Jesus brought the gathering together to refresh us so that we would go back out into the fields. That's where he wanted us. That's where he never wanted to leave us. And let me ask you a question. Are you willing? Are you willing to go back out to the field? So, there are plenty of fields. There are many fields, but few workers. So here's my question that I asked at the beginning. Are you one of them? I don't mean just in your head and mind. I mean, do you really want an intentional plan? Do you really want to start spending your time looking for ways to work in the field? Because there are many fields and they'll never end. And Jesus wanted to send us to them. He didn't just want to bring them here. He wanted us to go out to the field and work in the places that he was already working. Jesus didn't send us to a place that he didn't go. In fact, he's sending you a place just like the 72 that he passionately wants to go. And that's why he sent them out. That's why he said, I will be right behind you. And don't worry about what to say. When you get into those places and authorities begin to question you at the workplace or other places, friends begin to question you. Why are you doing this? Why are you making it all about your faith? Why are you always trying to cram this on me? Don't worry about what to say, because I will be with you and I will give you the words, he said. And then, he said, I will come behind you into each one of those towns. And so, this is our mission. To go back to the field. Would you pray with me? And you say, Pastor, the field is hot and it's hard and it's difficult, and I'm not sure what to do about it. Jesus, it's not complicated. He's just saying, would you say yes? Maybe your own faith isn't there. Maybe you haven't crossed the line of faith in your life right now. And right now in this moment, you say, well, man, if there was a God like that, if that's who Jesus really was, I sure would love to meet that person. This is your moment to cross the line of faith and to say, Jesus, I believe. I know I've got a lot of imperfect things in my life. I believe that you died and you will forgive me of all of that. I believe that you are risen. I believe that you're still alive. And I want to invite you to be alive in me today. And this is your moment to cross that line of faith. Maybe you've never crossed it before. You've been around the faith, but you've never crossed that line of faith. Let me tell you, you need to cross that line of faith this morning, not just because of you. You need to cross that line of faith because of the world that desperately needs to see that faith in you. And you say, Pastor, that's me today. I'm ready to cross the line of faith. I'm ready to believe in him. I'm stepping across this line with Jesus for the first time in my life. If that's you, would you just pray, raise your hand right now? Raise your hand and say, I believe this is my moment right now. Raise your hand. Yes. Hi, I see you back there. Yes. Others right here. Thank you. Others up top. Yeah, I see you. Others, where are you? Yes, thank you. This is my moment. I'm crossing this line of faith. Yes, I see you way back there. Yes, I see you over here. I see you up in the balcony. Thank you. This is my moment right now where I'm crossing the line of faith. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to pray with me. And make this your own prayer. Jesus, thank you that you came for me, that you died for me, and that you are risen for me. Jesus, I believe that you are who you said you are. And only you can wash away everything from my past in this moment. I'm asking you to bring forgiveness to me and transform me through Jesus Christ today. And I want to join your mission. I believe that you've risen from the dead, and now I'm asking you to be alive in me. I invite you into my life to be Lord of my life. I pray that in Jesus' precious name. Amen.